Here we are with another episode of Talking Sports with the Legend. Tonight's guest, a great writer for NBCSports.com and NBC Sports Philly on the TV. And he takes care of the Philadelphia Phillies. Stephen, the Legend, go ahead.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Legend. How you doing, Steve? It's great to be with you. Glad we could finally get together. You're a busy man.
Yeah, you too.
Well, we made it all work, pal.
Mhm. Where are you from?
Well, I'm from New England originally, but I've been in the Philadelphia area for more than 25 years now, since '94 when I came down to cover the Phillies. But grew up about 8 or 10 miles outside of Providence, Rhode Island, and not far from Boston. So grew up rooting for the Red Sox and the Bruins and the Celtics. And believe it or not, when I was a kid, the Patriots were sort of fourth place. They were not much of anything, and now they sort of rule the day up there, and they kind of have taken off in the 25 years or so I've moved out of town from up there. But so they're kind of the kings up there. But that would be my background. My youth was spent in New England rooting for the Boston teams. But like I said, been in Philly since '94, Philadelphia area. All three of my kids were born here. My wife and I, we love it here. So, I feel like this is home now.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Providence College, which is a school in Rhode Island, the Friars, and watched them actually go to the Final Four in basketball when I was there as a student. And it was a great place to go. My dad went there, my grandfather went there, and my two brothers went there. So a bit of a family tradition.
What was your major?
English. I was an English major, so I had to do a lot of reading. And at times it was really tough just because of the volume of it and keeping up on it. But it was a good major because when you're at least a lot of the journalists I know, a lot of the writers I know, aren't real big fans of numbers. And I'm not a real big fan of numbers. They were never all that friendly to me. Words were much more friendly to me and easier to come by. So it seemed like more of a natural major for me. So I read a lot of books, wrote a lot of papers. My teachers are probably pretty surprised that now I'm a writer, a sports writer, but it's been a lot of fun. And so that was my background. I grew up in a household where my dad was a teacher, and my mother loved to read novels and newspapers, and my dad was also a coach. So in our house, we had a lot of baseballs, a lot of hockey pucks, a lot of books, and a lot of newspapers. So words and sports were sort of a natural for me, maybe to pursue something like this as a career.
Did you play any sports as a kid?
Poorly. Played them all. Played mostly baseball and hockey, but gosh, in the backyard we did everything. So those were my two favorites, and I had a lot of great memories. Just riding around the neighborhood with my glove hanging from the handlebars, looking for a pickup baseball game, and playing hockey. I tell my kids all the time, we played, all of January and February, we played hockey on the ponds up there, and it was an awful lot of fun. And things don't freeze the way they used to. Even now, if I'm up that way and the ponds are frozen, I try to get out there with my brothers.
How did you get into what was your first job out of college?
So my first job, actually sort of in college, I worked a little bit part-time at the Providence Journal, which was the newspaper up that way. And that was the newspaper where Jason Stark got his start, great Philadelphia Hall of Fame baseball writer. Mm-hmm. It's also one of the papers, or the paper, where Angelo Cataldi, a great Philadelphia talk radio host, got his start. I actually kind of got my start there as a college student, answering the phone and running for coffee and just helping out any way I could, taking scores over the phone and writing a paragraph that they would put in the paper. And then eventually I started covering some games. And from there, my first full-time job was at a place called the Pawtucket Times, which was in a neighboring city from Providence. And it was a great experience because they had a AAA baseball team, the Pawtucket Red Sox. And I was able to cover that team for 6 years and really gain a lot of really great experience that helped me before my move to Philadelphia and covering the Phillies.
Favorite sport to cover. His favorite sport to cover. His favorite sport to cover is baseball.
What was your favorite sport to cover?
Was it always baseball?
Was it always
Yeah, over my years, I love covering baseball. My dad was a coach, so it's always been in our blood. My dad, he passed away a couple of years ago, and I was going through some of his stuff, and I actually found some old identification cards. He did some scouting for the Milwaukee Brewers in the very early 70s. So baseball was in our blood, but we loved hockey too. We loved football. We loved them all. And in my career, I've covered them all. As a young writer, I think it's really important as a young reporter to get out there and try to cover a little bit of everything before you specialize or concentrate on one sport. But I really loved baseball. I kind of always wanted to do it, cover baseball. I was really inspired by a lot of great writers in New England, like Peter Gammons, like Jason Stark, as I mentioned earlier, a guy named Sean McAdam from Providence, and then he worked in Boston. He was a great writer who inspired me as a young guy breaking in. And then, going to work there in Pawtucket, they had a AAA team that sort of all lined up and really helped me focus or concentrate on baseball and be able to seek jobs covering baseball eventually. But I enjoyed covering all the sports. Hockey, I covered a lot of football, I covered Little League, I covered high school sports, both boys and girls high school sports, covered cross country, basketball, soccer, I covered a race at Madison Square Garden once, the Milrose games, because there was some local runners in it. So those were all great experiences for me, leading to coming to Philadelphia. When I worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer, I even covered some auto racing, some NASCAR, the Daytona 500. So much fun, loved it. Did an Olympics in Salt Lake City, loved it. So even though baseball is something I focus on, I love all sports, and I've enjoyed covering them all because Steve, the common denominator in all these sports is they're played by people, they're played by human beings, and every person has a story, every person has their own unique story. And it's fun to, kind of find that story and then tell it to the readers or even the viewers.
Here's a question for you about Pawtucket and Rhode Island, living up there, and then you started working there. And did you know any of the players, the kids from the neighborhood, that even make it big, like guys from Providence area? Because you were involved pretty much once you were in college into the writing part of it, so you would remember their names, I'm sure.
Oh, sure. When I was a young writer, some of the guys that played in Pawtucket, it was funny. I tell the story all the time that when I started covering baseball, I was younger than all the players. It was a little bit intimidating. And then there was a time where they were all contemporaries. And then Jamie Moyer retired, and nobody else was older than me anymore. So I've seen, I've kind of, gotten young and middle-aged and old covering baseball. But yeah, like when I started covering the Pawtucket Red Sox, a young guy named Mo Vaughn was there, and he ended up winning. He won a American League MVP.
Yes.
Great guy, big, strong power hitter, first baseman. Yeah, I covered him on the way up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of guys I saw come through Pawtucket. I'll tell you another story. In the early 90s, the team from Charlotte came through Pawtucket, and they had a young slugger named Manny Ramirez, a young slugger named Jim Thome, and a manager named Charlie Manuel. So
Oh,
I saw a lot of guys there on the way up in Pawtucket. Even as a kid going to the ball games over there, Wade Boggs played there, Hall of Famer. So you see a lot of different guys on the way up coming through minor league baseball. It was a great experience because the minor league setting is very intimate. The ballpark is small. You're so close you can hear the fielders snapping their gum, and it was just really cool to just see it all up close. And I think it really made me appreciate when I got a job covering the major leagues.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Steven's had a lot of opportunity to go to a lot of the minor leagues since he's been pretty much an adult. Like, they didn't have anything in this area until the first thing was the Atlantic City Surf team. And we went down to see that. Camden River Sharks. I took him over to a game. So I said, we got there the day of the game. And Mitch Williams was pitcher and manager, and then he just managed. And I take him over and I said to the lady, I want to get my son the best seats in the house. She goes, you want the first row or second row behind home plate? I said, the first row. So we get there early and we had a ball.
We take the boat?
We took the boat over. We took the ferry over to make make a day out of it. We had a great time. And his mom.
Well, I'm glad to see. I think I still love going to a minor league game, and we're really lucky around here because we have the team. There's teams in Trenton, there's team in Wilmington, New Jersey, and then of course the Phillies have a team in Jersey Shore and Lakewood, and then they have the Reading team and the Lehigh Valley team up in Allentown. So there's a lot of options now, especially if you want to see young Phillies players coming up on the way.
When we were kids, it was like you had to go to Allentown. And nobody's dad wanted to drive up to Allentown to see the minor leagues, but you could go down to the Shibe Park before I got there, and then the Veteran Stadium. The tickets were, Steve, like $5 at general admission at the Veteran Stadium when they first opened up. So that was the seats, the 700 level. Then we had to go all the way up top. Yeah, so we lived, not me, Stephen, but my father was in the Navy, and we lived 4 years up in, my dad told me as a kid, we lived in Newport, Rhode Island. And then when I got older, I found out we lived in Middletown, Rhode Island.
Well, they're kind of one and the same. So there's they're all on Aquidneck Island, and you have three towns there. You have Newport, Middletown, and Portsmouth are all on Aquidneck Island. So you, for all intents and purposes, lived in Newport. That was a big Navy area.
I didn't tell you the best part. We lived in a trailer park.
That's all right, as long as you had a place to put your head down, right? And listen to the ball game at night.
My mom didn't like it, and neither did me and my three brothers in a little trailer. So go ahead, Steve, go back to your interview. So I liked the Red Sox as a kid. Carl Yastrzemski was my guy.
He was my guy too. He was my favorite player, still is. I actually get goosebumps when I watch his grandson play for the San Francisco Giants. I feel old, but I like to watch that kid swing the bat. He's got a nice swing. Carl Yastrzemski was always my favorite player, and he will always be my favorite player. We had a guy from Providence too, named Davey Lopes. He was right from Providence.
Oh God, Davey Lopes was the coach and the Dodgers, and he played against. He was on the great Dodgers team. He was second baseman for the Dodgers.
So
wow, that's interesting.
And he ended up coaching with the Phillies. He was on the coaching staff when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008, and getting to know Davey was a thrill because, times were a little simpler then. We didn't have ESPN, and games weren't on TV every night from all over the country. So as a kid, I seldom saw the Dodgers, maybe game of the week. And Davey Lopes, a guy from Rhode Island, played second base for the Dodgers for 9 seasons. And, I remember reading about him and then watching him in the World Series and the game of the week, and then getting to meet him and learning what a great baseball guy he was. I mean, he really was a huge contributor to the 08 Phillies World Series because he weaponized their base running. He turned Victorino into a weapon on the bases, and he worked with Jimmy Rollins. He was just Charlie Manuel hired him and turned over all the base running to Davey Lopes and says, you do what you want to do. And that was a big strength on that ball club, base running. And that, I think, went back to Davey Lopes. He obviously had really good personnel to work with, but he was a real difference maker for that personnel.
Steve, tell him about your experience that year. What did you see? And the next year, what did you see? What game did you go to the next year?
Oh, we held this perfect game.
He was at the Cincinnati game. Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
The,
The no hitter. That
Yeah.
wasn't the perfect game, right? That was the no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the no-hitter by Doc. Was it October 4th or 5th or something like that?
We got the ticket up over here. I can't. That's what I was just pointing to, and I can't find it right now.
Yeah, that was
frame.
that was a great memory. I'll tell you a funny story about that game. I still have the scorecard with some of my stuff. And the last batter of the game, I think it was Brandon Phillips, right? And he hit that little dribbler up the first base line.
Yes.
It almost hit the bat, and then Chooch made that great play. I never filled in that square on my scorecard because, I see the dribbler and I'm like, okay. And I see it almost hit the bat, and I see Chooch make this great play. And I was up from my seat and I ran to the elevator to get downstairs to the press conferences into the clubhouse. So I never filled in that last square. Even after the game, I never filled it in. I kind of left it as is.
Yes, because that's like him and my daughter went, and I'm home watching the game, and I was, oh man, when he hit that,
I was saying it all day.
he kept saying it. I'm gonna go see a no hitter, and I said, get out of here. I said, Steve, you. I said, it's like it's a very rare thing that, especially he had just pitched the perfect game. How many, like a week before that? Remember how close?
He pitched the perfect game. He pitched the perfect game on May 29th. So it was a few months, but he had that
still,
great season. It was his first year there. He won the Cy Young. So Steve, you predicted that.
Yes, he did. And I said, the Reds are too good. They're not going to get, and then they win. He does it and he comes home. I told you, Dad. I said, I should have not ever argued with you.
Wow. Well, how many wins you got the Phillies for in 2022? Give me a prediction.
Can't get a prediction yet, tell him, Steve. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
What do you think? Tell me your favorite player is.
Bryce Harper.
Oh yeah, the MVP. You got to sit in right field some night. He comes out, he bows to all the fans, he throws balls up there. Maybe he'll throw you one.
Tell him your trip, Steve.
Huh?
Tell him about your trip to spring training.
I went to spring training right before COVID.
He was in the hospital December of 2019 and then January of 2020. So we got out and he's better now. And he went through a lot of stuff, and me and his wife, my wife, his mother, for his whole life and 38 years of my life now, we said, let's surprise him. So we get tickets to the games and we fly down, and we didn't tell him till that morning we were driving to the airport.
Oh wow, what a treat.
He was so mad because he kept saying, I thought you were going to take me spring training one of these years, Dad. And I'm like, I don't know, Steve, because we didn't know we knew COVID was around, but we didn't know it was getting shut down. So we went down the end of February. We got home, the last day we got home was a Friday, February 29th, leap year that year. And God bless, man, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that whole spring was surreal. Well, I'm glad you got to get down there. Did you get any good pizza or anything in Clearwater?
Well, we went to the famous breakfast place.
Lenny's.
Lenny's, thank you.
Yes.
And then I worked on Broad Street, and I happened to get lucky one day, and one of the Andrew Knapp came in to register his car with our business, the business I worked for, and I looked at him. I said, give me your license, register, title. So I said, oh, California. So then I look at it, it says Knapp. I was like, wait a minute. Let me see your license. And I got his license. I could make copy. And I ready to give it back to him. I was like, wait a minute. I looked up at him and was like, you play for the Phillies? And he's like, yeah. And I came out. I'm behind glass and the steel thing. And I go out and shake his hand. So I said, nice to meet you. And I didn't even get a chance to tell him about little Steve. So we get down there and I said, Steve, he will recognize me. I said, I got a recognizable voice. And I said, I'll take my glasses off and my hat. So he comes out and we see him coming, and I know what he looks like. And I said, there he is. So he comes over and I said, Andrew, and he looked up and he's like, oh, they came over and he's like, oh man, it's great to see you. And I shook my hand. He said, I said, this is my son, Steven. And then he took pictures with him and it was great.
A couple.
Yeah. And then telling the story about the guy who has
Kendall Simmons.
Yeah. He was Kendall Simmons, right? Jim, you remember him? 20-year-old, 6'4" or whatever he was pitcher. So he comes up and he comes up to my wife says, can we get a picture? So my wife says, yeah. And he goes, is your son on Instagram? And my wife said, yeah, Steven has an account on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So he says to my wife, can I give you my phone number? So my wife goes, yeah, I'll take your phone number, like loud enough so I hear it. And I was like, you're old enough to be his grandmother, probably.
Now remember, we also got Chooch football down to him.
Not Chooch.
Oh, wow.
Not Chooch, Steve.
No.
What the
other
catcher, the current catcher.
Realmuto?
Yes.
Yes.
He's in the
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not that. Those are some really good guys to meet. Andrew Knapp's a real class guy.
This was
and,
so funny.
JT Realmuto as well, and star player. So you had a special.
Wait, Steve,
and Kendall Simmons is a good prospect. So you met
thank you.
some
I
special
said to
guys.
Steven, I said, I'm gonna ask him. And then Steven threw the ball down from the stands and he said, hey, and I yelled down, sign that for my son. So one of the backup catchers, we don't know who it was, says to Steven, Steven gets it for him and he takes it over and he gets him to sign it. And then he brings it over. And then before he brought it over, my wife and I yelled out, you signed it too. And he goes, if I sign it, it's not going to be worth anything. I said, we're not going to sell this ball. I said, my son wants you to sign it. You did a good thing. So the guy signed it. I forget his name, but he was a nice guy. We had such a blast. Didn't we, Steve?
Yeah, then we met Greg Murphy.
Yes, Greg Murphy.
Yeah.
We talked to him for a while. We should interview him.
Yeah.
Oh, we weren't doing interviews then. All right, Dizzy, get back to the interview.
You met all the great ones, all the great
We
ones.
did it.
Who was your favorite athlete to interview?
Wow, that's a tough one because I'd have to say there's a lot of them. I'll give you a couple names. Jimmy Rollins. Every time I watched him play shortstop, I felt like I was watching greatness. What a player! And then he was very smart and articulate and opinionated and outspoken and witty and colorful. He was a fun interview. So the combination of watching him play ball and play so well, he was an MVP. I mean, he's the guy who said we're the team to beat. Not everybody talks like that. Not everybody makes those bold predictions. So he was what we say. Excuse me. He was what we say in the business, good copy, and he was also a great player. So very exciting guy to watch and interview. Kurt Schilling in the same vein. You always felt like you were watching greatness, and he said interesting, provocative things after ball games. Billy Wagner was a little bit like that. Ryan Howard was, watching hit these mammoth home runs. He was always a gentleman. Even a guy recently, I always loved talking to Michael Franco. I know he didn't become a star, but he had a wonderful, wonderful personality. He was, when he struggled, he was always accountable. When he had a good game, he was there, and he had a big smile and a lot of personality. But, I've been around a long time. I covered the Yankees early in my career. Derek Jeter was always a special guy to talk to. And a guy named David Cohn, because he was so smart and insightful about the game and about pitching, he would be on my top 10 list. And I'm probably leaving out a whole bunch of guys. Rex Hudler would always make you laugh. Jim Thome was very interesting to speak with. Really too many to name, probably. But just many, many guys I've been fortunate enough to get to know and to speak with over the years. Brad Lidge, Bryce Harper's an exciting guy. You just on and on and on. Just, so many of them.
How many books have you written, Jim?
Just I did one with Todd Zalecki a decade ago called The Rotation. And that's the only one. I've helped some friends with some stuff, but that's just about it. Yeah.
Because the rotation that 10 years ago was at the Phillies rotation.
Yeah, we did a Todd Zielecki, one of my colleagues, good friend. We did a book on the that star-studded rotation of 2011. Doc Halladay, Cole Hamels, Cliff Lee, Roy Oswalt, Joe Blanton. Yeah, and we kind of chronicled their season.
How did they not win? How did they not win the World Series? How? With that rotation that you just called out, I don't understand it.
You know, it's I still scratch my head about that. I do and I don't, because it's baseball. Anything can happen, especially in a short series. That entire season,
right? But pitching's supposed to be everything, right?
Yeah, and they had a bad week, and they, were a couple of games where their stud pitching staff didn't pitch all that well. Oswalt and Lee both had tough games against the Cardinals that week. They didn't hit consistently. They really didn't hit after the first game of that series.
Right.
And the St. Louis Cardinals were absolutely on fire. I mean, I think they went like 30 and like, I don't know what maybe like 25-10 down the stretch.
Was that
and
the year? Was that the year that Charlie did something at the end of the season and it wound up playing them the first round? Was that it? Was that the year?
Well, Charlie didn't do anything except what he's supposed to. Charlie didn't do anything except what he's supposed to do, win ball games.
I remember Angelo complaining about them losing or winning or losing or something, losing a game that they should have won because he rested players, and then they wound up having to play the Cardinals, and then the Cardinals, right.
Actually, the way it shook out was they went to Atlanta for that final weekend, and the Braves was still in it. And, the Phillies, to me, they honored the integrity of competition, the integrity of the schedule. And they played hard right to the end because the Braves were trying to win a wild card. And the Phillies ended up sweeping the series. If they had lost one game of the series, especially the last one, which they won in 13 innings, they would have played the Arizona Diamondbacks in the first round, not the red hot St. Louis Cardinals. And who knows, maybe the Cardinals and the Braves would have had a playoff for the wild card. But a lot of folks have said in retrospect, why didn't they lose the last game? Because that's not the way you play baseball. It's not the way you compete.
Any sport.
You go out to win. You try to win the ball game. I don't care what it is. And Michael Martinez made a great catch. They ended up winning the ball game. And that's not the reason that they got beat by the Cardinals. That is not the reason.
I knew there was something that I remember everybody complaining, and I remember laughing because it was everybody who never played sports. I played high school and college soccer, and I don't care how bad or good the team was, you never gave up and you never not tried to win. Especially guys who wanted to score, get your name in the paper. What are you going to do? The coach would say, stop scoring. No, take me off. There's the only way I'm stop scoring. Otherwise, I want to get my name in there to get a scholarship. If you're a high school, you were staying out there as long as you could.
Yeah, well, it's like Herm Edwards said most succinctly, you play to win the game. That's what you play to win the game. And the people who don't play to win the game, there's a name for them. It's called losers.
That's a great one, Jim. Thank you for that one. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for anybody who wants to get into what you're doing?
Journalism.
Here's my tip: read a lot, because you're dealing with words, you're writing a lot, and I saw this quote from a famous writer years ago, and I forgot who the writer was. It was a famous writer of classics. And the quote was something like, long before I was a writer, I was a reader. So that would be my advice: read a lot. Find people you like and you like their style, and read them and see what works for them, and read other people and compare how this writer handles this situation, that writer handles that situation, and read a lot and really grow to enjoy it. And I guess that would be, and have like an interest in people. Because like I said earlier, all sports are competition and they're played by human beings and people, and everybody's got a story. So if you're interested in that person's story, you might, pull something pretty interesting out of them and have something cool to write about. But I would say read a lot and write a lot, because it's like, it's like any other skill. It's like practicing soccer. The more you practice, the better you get. So write a lot, write, and then put it away. And 3 years later, go back and read it and say, boy, I stunk, but I'm better now. That's, I think that would be my number one bit of advice for anybody might want to get into like newspaper writing, which is, where I broke in. And I still, am a writer. I just do it digitally at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com.
And don't you find that just as good? Because people, I know they say now the 20 somethings can only get like, 40 characters, and then you got to give them a break. And I'm like, there's not all those kids out there. There's other guys that are looking to read, to learn about things. I read him a couple of books, Cardi Lloyd's book, and we're in the middle.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, we're in the middle of Julie Ertz's book because he likes women's soccer. He volunteers with a women's soccer, college soccer team. And I said to him, women in sports are great to look up to because they got to persevere through Title IX. Some of these girls, women, and these other girls that are in there now trying to get in sports. And then people get like jealous. But I then tell them, well, pay attention. And now with all these videos, remember the basketball tournament, the girls filmed their workout, and then they filmed the guys' workout area. The guys had a full gym,
Yeah.
I said, that's how ridiculous it is. But his school was a very equality school where they have, and the women's sports are probably, no offense, guys, but better than the guys. The girls' volleyball team went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Your team just missed it. Got to the finals of the tournament.
Semifinals.
Yeah. Tell them what happened. What happened this year? What was your team? What happened to your team? Your team this year, your 10th season. No,
we won our 100th game.
Hey, and he had.
I think I might have seen that on Twitter because I follow you. All your exploits on Twitter, but I know what you're saying. I'm a big fan of women's sports as well, and I walked the walk a little bit because I coached my 3 girls when they were little tykes. I coached them in softball, and honest to God, some of the most cherished memories I have of being a dad.
Hey, you hear that, Steve? 3 girls. God bless you. And I always tell people, I love my son and I love my other son, but my daughter is the one that is going to be the caretaker, right, Steve? She take care of him, take care of my wife and me when we get older. So no, great, Jim. It's been great. It's been great talking to you. And Stephen's been dying to talk to you. And I said to him, I just wish Stephen was able to read you in the height of the '94. And that's the stuff I should have read you. But back then he was not as interested in the interview process and everything. He loves it now.
That's all right. Well, you hey, it's tough interviewing people. It's not easy. I know firsthand. You did a heck of a job. I mean, you did a great job, Steve.
Thank you.
Both, and it was. I'm grateful you had me. I thank you for thinking of me and having me. And it was a lot of fun to talk to you, and a lot of fun, following you on Twitter. And I wish you all the success in the world in everything you guys do. And I appreciate you guys thinking of me, and I wish you a really Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you very much. And we'll hopefully see you at some of the Philly stuff. I have a good friend that's a vice president for the Phillies, Kathy Killian. And
oh, yeah. She's great.
Yeah, Stephen interviewed her. If you go on his YouTube, you can look at his log and see his interview with Kathy. He interviewed Kathy, Scott Palmer, and looking forward. Hopefully next year, she said, might be able to try to get him upstairs in the booth to meet some of the guys he loves listening to. And my favorite's Larry Anderson. I hate to tell all the other guys, but I love Larry Anderson. I can't wait to hopefully someday meet him.
He's the best. Larry, I'll tell you a little story about Larry.
Please,
he was a veteran player when I first started covering the Phillies in '94, and I was a young guy, new in town. He just was such a great guy. He didn't care if you were, from a little newspaper, the Mayberry Gazette or the Philadelphia Inquirer. He treated everybody like gold. I mean, he's a hell of a man, the way he treats people. And it's just an honor to know Larry Anderson. And, I'm in the press box a lot watching the game, but I'll put on my headphones a lot because I agree with you. He's just a lot of fun to listen to, him and Scott Fransky. We got it so good here with, our television and radio guys, Tommy McCarthy and
My whole life.
Oh.
Gene Hart was our hockey guy. When I told people, like, they're like, the guy was great. And I'm like, yep. And then I told him he left. We got Mike Emmerich. I mean, come on, man. We went from Gene Hart, who's in the Hall of Fame, to Mike Emmerich, who's in the Hall of Fame. And then baseball, Richie Ashburn, Harry Kalas. I read Harry Kalas. I think I'm almost done. He's unbelievable guy. What a story he had his whole life.
Oh yeah, Harry. I mean, Harry.
Chicago.
I got to know Harry very well. I mean, I mentioned I have 3 girls.
So did, right?
It was a great honor because 2 of my girls were born during the season, and he announced, their arrival.
Get out of here.
I'm not sure if he was doing radio or TV, but yeah, he announced that they had arrived, and I mean, it just kind of gives me goosebumps to think about. So I've been, honestly, I tell you about, what sports writing is. It's about people. Everybody has a story, and games are played by people. But the people I've been able to rub elbows with throughout my career, just quality human beings who are talented and just wonderful people. It's been an absolute thrill, and you just mentioned so many of those folks. So, and you add you guys to the list. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everything you did. I appreciate it. Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'll be following you, Steve. Merry Christmas, guys.
Thank you very much. You too.
Have a great night. I'm going to go watch those Flyers right now.
Hey, me too. There you go.
All righty.
Get my dinner. Take care.
See ya.